Okay, good morning. Welcome to the communication tracking webinar. My name is Sarah. I'm from Jonas, and we will be getting started right now. So if you're having trouble seeing the screen, or like I said in the note, if you're having trouble hearing the audio, please write in the chat box and we can get that corrected before we get started. Also, we will be recording this webinar today, so it will be available to you online via YouTube video. So if you do not wish to be recorded asking questions at the end, please let me know, or please use the chat box to use your questions as well. And if I do get questions in the chat box, I will not use your name. So let's get started. Okay, so just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. The phones will be muted. And if you do have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and put them in the chat box or use the Q&A. And you can find the chat box up at the top of your screen. There's a little green bar that you can click on. When you click on that green bar, you'll be able to click on chat or Q&A, and both of those things I'd be able to see throughout the webinar. If you do not have your screen full screened, what you can do is click on the little blue and green circle on your taskbar, and that should pop up the chat as well. All questions will be answered when appropriate, so if I do see a question come through that is relevant to the slide that we are on, I will go ahead and answer that right away. If we are moving on, I will save that to the very end. So it'll be about 50 minutes of information. Probably this one usually runs a little bit shorter, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. And also a copy of the session will be available to you online in PDF, and you can find the PDF on the resources and training section of the website. Right where you signed up for this webinar, right at the bottom, there are a list of all the PDF slides. This slide will be available for that. And you can also find the video as well. And that's also under the resources and training section, but it'll be under video library. So what to expect, this webinar is just to enhance your knowledge of Jonas. So this is just tips and tricks about using the communications tracking feature. We do expect that you have a base level knowledge of Jonas already. It's not to be used as a replacement for training. And it's about 50 minutes of information, 10 minutes for question and answer. This one does tend to run a little bit shorter because there are just a couple. It's very basic setup. So we will have more time for questions at the very end if you need it. So getting started, just a little bit about this communications feature. It allows you to track extensive notes or issues for members. So what that means is you can add notes about different communications that you've had with your members, such as members that are in collections, members that are making special requests, or if you're using member accounts for your events, you can also track different things that maybe requests that they've had, questions, things that you need to follow up on. You can keep that tracked on their member file. You can also have these communications set up to either pop up as a reminder every time that you log into Jonas, or it can sync with your Outlook. So if you're using the Outlook calendar, it can actually pop up in your Outlook calendar as a reminder. And then you can also report on every task and all the notes within those tasks as well. So this is what we'll be going through today. First, we'll go through all of the different setups. We'll go through processing and actually putting a communication on a member's file. And then we'll go through some of the reporting that's available to you as well. So just a basic overview of the setups for communications. First, we'll have to define what we call task types and any user restrictions. So you can have different task types such as collections, such as communications, such as special requests, and you can actually set different users to be allowed to use those task types based on different types. So maybe only certain users in your club, like the accounts receivable person and the controller, can do a collections task type, but everybody can go ahead and put in a communication. We'll also go through defining the menu access for those who will be needing access to this communication. So that would be in their user profile, what do they need access to in Jonas for them to be able to use this effectively. We'll have to set up emails under the users for those if you want to use it with Outlook. So defining task types and user restrictions means that we're telling Jonas what users can use what kind of task. Defining the menu access means that we're telling Jonas who has access to actually use communication tracking as a whole. And then setting up emails is for people who wish to use the Outlook feature. In the user profile, there is a spot to go ahead and put in the user's email. That's how Jonas knows which Outlook calendar to sync it with. So you do have to have your email set up in Jonas. And then the last step would be to flag users who have assigned communication tasks and then that way it'll appear whenever they log into Jonas. So not only can you assign tasks to yourself, you can actually assign them to other people on your staff and have it appear as a reminder when they log into Jonas, as well as on their Outlook calendar. So the first setup, of course, is defining our task types, and you can find this under Club Management, Communication Tracking, Task Types. Of course, you have to select your club, and just like everything else in Jonas, you do have to give it a code and a description. So the code and the description are really just for internal, so you know what you're getting into when you see this task. And then you set your different parameters. So you have the option to, as a default, for every time you use this task type, create an Outlook task. You have the option to sync it to Outlook right away. And you also have the option to send an email when it's complete. So you can have 3 different Outlook options. All of these, of course, sync with Outlook if you're using it, just so that you can more effectively track the task that you're setting up for your users. You can also see over to the right, there's a button for restrict and a button for task users. So this is just a way for you to say, these are the people that this is restricted to. These are the only people who can set up tasks under this type. And also, task users would be who would typically be assigned this task. So the restrict would typically be maybe your controller and one other senior person at the club, whereas the task users would be all of your staff in that department because anybody could be assigned a task for a member. Another note on communication setups is you may only require a single task type. So we're giving examples such as collections, such as notes, such as reminders, special requests. You could effectively use the communications tracking module with only one task type, just called notes and tasks. You don't have to have them grouped out if that's not something that you think that your club would benefit on for reporting. So most people have multiple just if they want to use those restrictions, but having one will not affect the way that you use this module at all. The only benefit to having multiple task types is the reporting as well as using those restrictions. So this is the menu access that your staff will need if they wish to use communication tracking. If you go into administration, user management, and then user administration, what you'll need to do is make sure, of course, that they have club management checked off. And then within those club management menus, you need to have communication tracking, which is near the bottom. And then also you have, first of all, setup task types, as well as my tasks and the communications report. So setup task types was the screen that we just looked at. My tasks is just a list of all of the tasks that are assigned to the user who is signed in at the time. And then the communications report gives you a list of all the tasks that are right now outstanding, as well as any notes and special requests for them. So if you wish to use that module, you need to make sure that your staff has access to all 3 of those things. If you don't want them to be able to set up or edit any restrictions on your task types, make sure that they at least have the bottom 2, the ones that are circled in red. So communication tasks can be set up directly from the member file. If you're in the member file, so just Club Management, Member File, Setup, Edit Members, there is a little communications button down at the bottom, and that is where you actually set up what needs to be done on this member's account. So say the member calls you and gives you a task for you to complete regarding their account, and you want to put it into your communications tracking, you would go straight to their member file, and that is where you would set it up. You can also set it up from the account inquiry. So if you have staff that maybe you don't want to give them access to the member profile, you just want them to have access to the account inquiry, you can set it up directly from the account inquiry as well. And again, this was already said, but everyone should at least have my tasks as well as the communications report as menu access. So the third thing that was mentioned was attaching an email to the user profile who's going to be using communications. So these are 2 screenshots from the actual user management setup. So the first one is under user admin, under my profile. You just have to add the user's email address, and this is under my user profile, so administration, user management, user administration. You would just go ahead and add your email address there. And then also under my user preferences, I need to make sure that I have checked off member communication tasks. So that makes me eligible to be assigned a task within the communications tracking module. And this is just the path to get to where we were. So again, it's administration, user management, user administration, and then you'll go into user options to put in my email. And then to get to that user preferences screen, it's administration, user management, user preferences, and just flag the user. Again, that's the flag here on the right that's circled in red, member communications tasks. So those are the setups that you need. Of course, you need to make sure that you have a communication type set up, that it's restricted to the applicable users. The users have their menu access, and there is an email associated with all of those users, and they're also checked off to be eligible to be assigned tasks. Getting into the processing. So this is the screen, this is the My Tasks screen. So you can find that under Club Management, Communications Tracking, My Tasks. All you'd have to do here is select your club, select your user ID, and you can actually see a list of all of the different tasks that are assigned to you, at which point you can filter those lists. So you can say, I only want to see a certain task type, I only want to see ones that are past due, I only want to see ones that are completed. So this is just a way for you to go ahead and look at all the ones that are assigned to you, and you can actually also create new tasks from here. So if you don't have access to or you don't want to go all the way into the member profile, you can set up a new task right from this screen. So again, it's Club Management, Communications Tracking, My Tasks. It'll give you a list of all of your existing tasks, as well as if you look to the top right, you can create a new member item and a new guest item. So to create a new task, just go ahead and click on New Member Item, and that will take you to this screen here. So you have to assign a task to a member. You cannot just have a task that's not assigned or kind of free-floating. So this member, of course, we're using member 36. You give it a date and a time, so this is when it was created. And then you have to give it a type. So this is where those types come in handy. You can see in this example, we're using member request. Again, you will not have any trouble using this module if you just have one type set up called notes or tasks as well. After that, you do have to give it a contact. So the contact could either be the member, it could be a dependent of the member who's making the request, or it could be somebody else within the club, one of your coworkers. And then subject notes and then the description down right below it are just for your information, so you can kind of, subject notes would be a brief summary. So just if you were looking at it at a glance, you would be able to see exactly what this communication is about. And then the full notes gives you more room to actually put in full details of the specific request, put in additional contact information, and also put in any internal notes that you don't want the member to see, but you want to make sure that either your staff or yourself remembers for a later date. Looking to the bottom of this setup screen, the first tab you have is task details. So you want to make sure it's checked off as a task and you assign it to somebody. So in this example, of course, it's been assigned to me, and I've given a due date here, and my due date is 2016, November 30th. So I need to have this done by November 30th. It was requested on the 21st. Once this task is complete, you can go ahead and come in and put in a date complete, as well as change the status. So the status right now is not started. You also have the option for status of in progress. You also have a completed one, and you also have a canceled or a dropped status as well. So one thing to note, when you're coming in to say a task is completed, you would always want to give it a date complete, but also when you change the status to completed, it actually won't allow you to change it further. So make sure it's 100% complete before you mark it as completed, otherwise you will not be able to go in and edit it again. You do have two other tabs down here, additional users and Jonas reminders. We won't be going through that too much. Basically what that is the additional users, you can assign a task to multiple users. So maybe you have a team that's working on it as opposed to just one person. You can include all of those user IDs under the additional users tab. And then Jonas reminders, you can actually just check that off to say every time this person logs into Jonas, please remind them of this task. And then the last tab that we're going to discuss is Outlook options. So this is if you wish to sync this with your Outlook calendar, you would go to the Outlook options tab and of course check off Outlook task creation/created and also sync with Outlook task. And you can actually add an email when complete. So when this task is marked as complete, so under task details in the status, when you mark it as complete and give it a completed date, you can have it send an email to somebody else. So in this example, it's assigned to me and I'm having the email sent to me. In a real life scenario, what you would do is assign it to one of your staff and have the email sent to you when it's completed so you know that that is done. The last step to get it to your Outlook calendar would be to click on Send Outlook Appointment. So just a couple notes about processing your communications. If a task is not flagged, once you click OK, you cannot make changes to the entry. So do you see where it says Task here on the setup screen under Task Details? So if that is not checked off when you click OK, you actually can't make any more changes to it. You need to make sure it's checked off as Task so you can go in and make changes, add notes, mark it as complete, etc. We did talk about this already, but use the Additional Users tab to assign email and user IDs to multiple users. So if you have a team, of course, you're going to want to assign it to all of them. Jonas reminders can be used if you are not using Outlook, but it will only notify the users one time. So when they log into Jonas, it will notify them that they've been assigned a task. And then they can then go ahead and set themselves a reminder that recurs every time they log in. And then Outlook options, of course, you can enter your email so you'll receive an email when the assigned person completes the task. This would be what the email looks like when you go ahead and send it to either yourself or send it to the person who you're assigning this task to. You can see the subject transfers over from the subject line in the initial setup screen, and then the description goes into the body of the email and it attaches that ICS file, which is what puts it on your calendar. So that is pretty much it in terms of processing. It's a very simple process. It's one screen. It's just under communications in the member file as well as under My Tasks if you're looking in the communications module submenu. You do just have to assign yourself to task and then just remember to go back in every time something new comes up and make changes to either the status, make changes to the notes, or mark it as complete when it's complete. So as you progress through the task, make sure that you are tracking it on the member file. We're going to get into some of the reporting that's available now. So the first and only report actually under the communications module is called the communications report. So you can report based on a date range. You can report based on specific users who created tasks. You can report based on specific users who are assigned tasks. And you can also show only unfinished or past due tasks. So this report can show you everything that's available. It can show you just one person. It can show you just one type. And you can actually also, if this report isn't quite what you're looking for, the report generator option under the Club Management module does allow you to report on this. There are codes for communications tracking. So this slide, again, just goes over what the different reporting options are for you there. So you can, again, put in your date range. You can put in one day. So if you as the manager is looking and says, okay, I need to know what's coming up today, so I know what my staff is working on, you can run it just for one day. You can run it just for 1 week. You can run it for 3 days, whatever range you need to get the work done that you need. And then, of course, you can specify by user as well. So you can say who's assigned to what or who's creating tasks. So you can say what have my other managers been doing? What have they been assigning my staff to? And then as well as the Club Report Generator, just as a reminder, has codes to generate your own custom reports that pull from communications. So this is what the communications report looks like, organized by date and then type. And then it gives you the created by, the contact on the task, the subject and the notes, as well as who it's assigned to and the due date. And you can see that it actually gives you subheadings per member. And then these are all the communication tracking fields that you can put into a report in the Club Report Generator. So you can see all of the things that appear on that communications report also appear here, as well as all of the Outlook options. So if you're running a report on communications, you can actually see, okay, this task exists, but did it get sent to anyone's calendar? Is it a Jonas reminder? How does my staff know that it's there? So that's how you would run that report, is just under the report generator. So just as a summary, to get to your communications or to set up a new task for a member, you have access from number 1, Club Management, Member File, Set Up Edit Members is right there on the member screen. And I will show you screenshots on the next slide of where all of these things exist. Number 2, you have access from Club Management, Inquiry, Statements, Archive, and then the Member Account Inquiry and also the History Inquiry. Number 3, you have access from Club Management, Communication Tracking, My Tasks. And then also when you sign into Jonas, if it's flagged under User Preferences, you actually have access to set up tasks from there as well. So looking at, first on the left-hand side, the member file, you can see communications. The button to get to your communications for this member is highlighted in red. And then on the right-hand side from the member account inquiry, again, same button, communications. Takes you to the same screen, it's just 2 different levels of access. And then 3 and 4, the My Tasks screen. So Club Management, Communications Tracking, My Tasks. You can set up new member items from here. And then also when you log into Jonas, this My Task screen will pop up if you are checked off as Communications Tracking My Task in your user preferences. So I will open it up for questions now. I did not see anything come through the chat box, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone's phones, and we do have some time for questions.
Line unmuted.
Okay, so you should be unmuted now if anybody has any questions. Perfect. Okay, so I did get a question come through here on the Q&A. The question was, due dates and completion dates often differ. Is there a way for the person who has an assigned task to update the due date? Is there a report that tracks the due date and the completion date? Yes to both of those. So I will pull over my Jonas here. So if you have an assigned task on a member file, and I believe I have one for this person, what you can do is the person coming in, as long as they have access to get to the task screen, so this will either be the member who started it or the person who it's assigned to, they can change the due date as well as the completed date as long as the status has not been marked as completed. So they can always come in and change the due date, can always come in and change the date complete. And the report that tracks that would be, so I'm guessing that you mean a report that tracks if it's been changed or not. And if that is what you mean, there actually is not a edit log right now for communications tracking, but it's a really good idea. If you're looking for a report that just gives you a list of the different due dates and different completion dates, the communications report does give you that, as well as you can generate your own if you wish to put in more columns or more information from the Club Report Generator. So the person who has access to that task can always go in and change the due date, can always go in and change the completed date as long as the status is not marked as completed. At that point, you can't change anything because as far as Jonas knows, it's a completed task. We have another one here in the Q&A. Can the completion date surpass the due date? Yes. Yeah, definitely. And you can actually filter the communications report to show you just the overdue tasks. So if the completion date was after the due date, you can actually show that on a report to see the ones that were completed overdue. And again, that's just the communications report. It's an option to say, show me only overdue tasks. It's just that checkbox right there, show only past due. Are there any other questions for me today? Okay, Well, I will stay on the line, and I'll stay connected for a couple minutes just in case there are any last-minute questions. Just as a reminder, this slideshow will be available to you in PDF form on the jonassupport.com website under the Resources and Training tab, exactly where you signed up for this webinar. As well as this video, I will be sending it off to the marketing team this afternoon. I do have 3 other webinars today, so we'll do it at the very end. And it should be available to you on the website as well within about the next couple weeks or so. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining.